Okay, Modo people, I know you're all excited about 801 because now we are officially part of the Shatter Club. We can also shatter stuff now in 801 and run it through dynamic simulations and blow stuff up and break stuff down and put it all on YouTube so they can join the thousands of other Shatter videos that all look kind of the same on there. But hey, it's fun. This is why we do this stuff, right? What we're going to do is something over here new, just something like this. A little camera shake there, but we'll take a fairly simple object and we're going to use the shatter command in conjunction with multiple compound rigid body groups. And the reason we're doing that is we want to sort of direct the shatter as much as we can. If you just leave your animation up to the simulation gods, you're probably not going to get what you want. Simulation is a weird thing. It's a sort of a mixture between screwing around with a bunch of little parameters to try and get what you want, and then halfway in you get some happy accident that's better than what you wanted, and so then you try to preserve that, and it starts morphing and branching, and eventually you come up with something that you're happy with. I think I'll make a second video to show how we do the second part of this, which is emitting particles from the collisions. Of course, particles are an important part of any sort of shatter animation. And a lot of the shatter stuff we're seeing so far is just stuff like this without any particles. So we'll do probably a second video on that, because I don't think anyone can hang with me for the amount of time it's going to take to do it all in one video. Okay, enough of that. Back over here in Modo, actually, if you want to look at that scene real quick, here's in the setup window. So here it is. It's already been simmed, and you can kind of see over here in the camera view what's going on, and over here in the perspective view. So we have a number of different sort of shatter sizes and pieces, and we'll get to how we do that. We're going to be running the shatter command several times. And these groups here are compound rigid bodies. And we're going to show how we make those and why we do more than one of them. Okay? So, like any good Modo project, we'll start with a blank scene in the model viewport. Okay, I'm going to quickly create our mesh items that we're going to use, starting with the cylinder. Hold down Control and just throw that bad boy out from the center. Come over here, Y-axis. Make sure your position is all at 0. So you can just Control 0 or 0, Control Enter. If those are messed up, it'll do it all at once. Radius, let's do 0.3, 2.5, 0.3. I think that's pretty good. Size 32, segments 25. I think that's fine. You can adjust that if you want. Modo's dynamics are actually pretty fast, and you can have some segments in there. One thing you want to do is make sure that the center is at the polygon's bounding box. And if you created the pillar with everything at 0, you're good. You can actually press O, and under these visibility controls here, show pivots, let's say all, and show centers, let's say all. And so there's our center and pivot, and they're right on top of each other. That's why you can only see one of them. A center is basically, let's go to pivot actually. So select pivot up here. It's also number 6 on your keyboard. You can select that guy and just press the move tool, W, and move him out of the way. A pivot is essentially an offset from the center, okay? So if I press 7 and select the center, you'll see that the pivot comes along with it. All right, undo that. Press 6 and press 5 to go to the item, and then press E for rotate. You'll notice that transforms, E, R, scale, W, all default in item mode at the pivot, and that's all very useful. We undo all that. But for dynamics, and also for rigging, the center is important. So it helps find the center of mass in something like dynamics. So let's press 6 for the pivot and select that guy. Make sure our item's selected. You can see in channels here, there's a pivot position channel. Let's put that back to 0. Do the old escape double tap to unselect everything. And let's put these back to none. We don't need to see those guys. Okay, so that's in the center. What you do not want to do is you see pivots up here. Let's just press 5 for item, just so it's all back to normal. So our center is in the center. When you move this guy, you do not want to be in polygon mode and moving all of these polygons up and having the center, if I select the item and press W, the center is still way down here. Remember, the pivot is at the same place as the center by default. I want to move the item up, not the polygon. So let's go to item mode, right? And then move the item up, all right? So we're going to, if you press Control, now I can't see the handle up here anymore, but if you just press Control and whatever direction you're dragging in, it'll continue to translate in that direction. So that's just zoom in, holding control. I'm still just moving on Y. And I want it up a little bit. So we're at 10 millimeters here. Let's maybe zoom in to 5. So we'll want it, we'll say 5 millimeters. We'll just have it above the ground just a little bit. And I'll get back to that in a second. And then holding Shift, we can click on the plane here and get a plane. And go to polygon mode. And let's scale up our plane. Let's say equals 4,000%. You want to do that? 4,000% I think is good. Nice big plane. Okay, maybe that's even too big. Let's do 3,000%. Okay, so we've got our pillar and we've got our plane. Again, our plane, we aren't scaling up in item mode. We're scaling up the polygons. We want the item scales to be 0 for dynamic items. Okay, so we've got a plane and we've got our pillar, and I've left this little gap here. I'm going to put another piece of geometry in this gap, and that's going to help us with particles later on, and I'll explain that later. But for now, just hold Shift and get a cube going. We've got a cube. Now we're not going to do an item mode. We're going to go to polygon mode. Double click so I have all the cube polygons, and let's shrink Mr. Cube down. Okay, that's about right. I'm going to press 5 to be in item mode. I'm going to move the item up right in between these two guys. Good enough. And then going back, pressing 3 to polygon mode, and going to the top view. Let's just scale out this cube so it... oh, it's so small, so small. When you're doing this and the increments are so small because you're already up in the thousands, just deselect the tool, then reselect the tool. Just drop it, press it twice, and you'll get bigger increments. So this is fine, right? And it's just going to be sitting on top of this little guy there. So let's name this thing base, and let's name our plane ground. Why not? It's the ground. And our mesh, let's call pillar, AR pillar, and pop over to the setup tab so we can get going on this guy. First thing I'm going to do is organize my scene just a little bit because I'm very organized. Also, you can see like centers are on by default in the setup tab because they're important for what we're doing over here, dynamics and rigging. Okay, so pillar, ground and base, Control G to group that. We're going to call these geometry. I like to keep my scene organized for lots of reasons. You will notice camera and light, group these guys. Move that to the top there, I think, and we'll call these cameras and lights. Okay. Another thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and, well, first let's just select the base, and over here on the Dynamics tab, press Static Rigid Body. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. You'll see that the solver node was created here. I'm going to select the ground, same deal, Static Rigid Body. What I've done, you also see a new tab over here for both of these guys, base and the ground. A dynamic tab, and under it's enabled, it's rigid, and it's static. Okay, if I grab all these guys, including the solver, and drag them down here, you'll notice that they're connected to the solver node. What I also want to do is group the solver. I don't want it inside that group. I want it outside that group. Collapse that guy, and we'll call this group dynamics. So again, keep your item list organized. If you don't, you will regret it. I also like to color code these guys. So dynamics always like light green because, when I'm in particles, it's all green. It reminds me of green, reminds me of dynamics. Geometry, light blue, same deal. I always think of light blue, all these geometry icons. Cameras and lights, yellow, same deal. Kind of like lights are yellow. Okay, so now our scene's looking nice and pretty. Our pillar, we are going to make down here, dynamics, an active rigid body. The static rigid bodies, if I drag this down to the schematic here, they're all plugged into the dynamic solver. The static rigid bodies will not respond to forces. They will not respond to collisions from other objects either. They're sort of like immovable objects, like unbelievably dense immovable objects. The active rigid body, of course, will respond to forces and collisions. So if I press the little green triangle down here, it starts the simulation. And all that's doing is it's simulating our scene, but only with the values at this current frame 0. So if any values were animated or changing throughout the scene via an expression or something like that, that would not be part of the simulation, because the simulation is just running the simulation engine at this frame with whatever values happen to be present in this frame. This key right here, the filled in one, will actually, you see the timeline moving now. This one will take into account changing values in the simulation. So if you have something keyframed or an expression or a driven channel, it's going to be taken into account in the simulation using this one. So these are just little tools for us to preview the simulation. And this last one, of course, will actually calculate the simulation and cache the results. So right now, when I'm simulating, we've got gravity going on. If you look at the pillar here, and then the Dynamics tab, and under Force, it says affected by gravity, and we've got our Solver tab here. We have a gravity of 9.81 meters per second squared, if you remember your physics class, but nothing's happening. And this is a good thing, because that means our simulation is stable. It's not tipping off this little base here, and it's not, so our pillar is stable, which is, oops, camera view, which is what we want. So in order to tip this guy over, we're going to add, let me stop the simulation, we're going to add a force into the scene. So down here, you see this little triangle, which means there's multiple things. Here's our forces. Let's go with a radial force. Okay, pops in the middle there, and we can move it up and off to the side here in the side view. Go back to perspective. And what this does is it emits a force in all directions in equal magnitude. And it actually, instead of emitting a force out, it actually is emitting, it's acting like an attractor. So right now, if I press the simulation key, you'll notice that nothing's happening. And you might think, well, is this broken? Is this even hooked up to the simulation? If I drag this guy down into our schematic, like, no, it's hooked up into the simulation there. So what's going on? Why isn't anything happening with our simulation while it's running? Well, the thing with simulations is that the Modo has no idea, and it goes with all programs. They don't really know what values you're starting with, what size objects or items you're starting with, how heavy they are. And so what you have to do in any simulation is play with some of the values, the strengths and things like that, until things start to happen. Then you narrow those values down into ranges that make things happen that you like. And that's just how simulations go. After you use it for a while, you get sort of used to doing that, and you have a feel for ranges to use. So I've got this guy. Let's bump up the strength to like 1,000, right? So let's times 100. Well, check it out. Or times 10. Let's hit play. All right, so now we're getting a little bit of something here. We're getting a little bit of motion on our guy. It's being pulled towards him, right? So if I go up to 10,000, just for fun, now it's being pulled towards him, and then it overshoots, and it's being pulled back, and overshoots, and being pulled back, and so our forces are working, but with large values. But I don't want to pull this towards my guy. I just want to kind of push it away. So let's try negative 300 and see what happens with that. Just enough to knock over our pillar, okay? Okay, so that's a basic dynamics overview or review or whatever you want to say. I know I'm 12 minutes into this video and haven't shattered anything, so I need to stop sucking and shatter something. So, stop the simulation and grab this guy. Right now, our pillar under dynamics is an active rigid body, a dynamic rigid body. And if I shatter this guy and do 20 pieces, I'm going to get 20 little dynamic rigid bodies, active rigid bodies, which I don't want. I want to use a compound rigid body because I think that's going to make things easier for us in terms of managing our simulation. I'll show you about that in a second. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this guy undynamic. Dynamics, make undynamic, and you'll see that little dynamics tab disappeared. And if you look over in the schematic, the little purple thing just vanished like magic, and it's no longer dynamic. So this pillar is no longer dynamic. In fact, you are no longer dynamic, and I think you suck so bad you don't deserve to be in the schematic. So I'm going to right-click and say Remove Nodes. Get you out of the schematic. I am going to select you and come up here to Geometry and Mesh Shatter. Let's just start with Splinter. I think Splinter is a good shatter for this kind of thing. It's sort of long, longitudinal chunks, and I think looks good for the pillar, so we'll say Splinter. And looking at the dialog that pops up, okay, 100 pieces. We do not need 100 pieces. Let's just say 24 to make the simulation run a little faster. Sharpness, no big deal, 15%. I'm just going to leave that where it is. Cutting material, shatter interior. So that's basically going to be the name of your material group. The polygons that are on the inside of the cylinder right now, those polygons that are going to be created in the shatter command are given a material so we can texture them. I'm actually going to call that shatter interior, 2 words, capital letters, because I think that's easier to read. Center to bounds, that's what I was talking about earlier. You need the center in the center of the bounding box, so definitely you want that. Hide source will hide this pillar object, and once all the 20 pieces are made, which we want, we also want them added to a group. Generate normal map. Yes, you want that checked, and I'll show you why in 1 second. Okay, so hit OK, and it's going to do a quick shatter thing. It shouldn't take that long with just 20 pieces, and there we go. So what happened is it's hidden our pillar, and it's given us a group called pillar underscore shards, so it's nice enough to name us something there. And we've got a bunch of pillar shards all selected there, and you see, like, there they all are selected. So a couple things. We're going to take our pillar and Control G to group it, and we're going to call this inactive geometry. And we will be filling that up with some other things, and we'll hide that guy. Our pillar shards now. We want to make these a compound rigid body. So if we double click our group there, it selects everything inside the group, and you can Control click to deselect the folder there. I'm not sure that really matters though. And then if you select compound rigid body, just like that, you can see the dynamic tab is added there. It added the dynamic properties to all of our shards here. So dragging these guys into the schematic, and it gives us a nice sort of layout here. When you initially drag something in, and we pull it over here, you'll see there's one line, one connection leading to our dynamic solver. And from this guy right here, and you'll notice that all the other guys, their relationship connection feeds into the pillar's relationship input. And what's that doing? What that is doing is that the right way to say that? Anyway, what it's doing is, if you let me just select all these guys, you'll notice there's no dynamic tab over here. But our one hero guy, there is a dynamic tab. So it's a compound rigid object, and this is the compound object, all of these guys. But we're able to put all of our dynamic controls on just one item, which is very convenient. And we're going to be able to do some things with glue strength and some other stuff with this compound rigid body that's going to make this simulation a little better. So we're just going to keep it simple right now. We have one compound rigid body for this guy. And if you right click and make him blue, and we'll call this pillar shard hero. Okay, just so we know that's our guy. And then let's play the simulation, and boom, they all blow off the screen like dust. And we never changed the strength of that, so why is that? Why did it do that? A couple things. Again, we're dealing with a simulation here. Let me grab all of my shards. I don't want the base. I just want the shards. There they are. In fact, I just want the hero shard, to be honest. And we go to dynamic. And here we are at local mass. Initially, when we had our original pillar, it defaulted to local density. It's just another algorithm for determining mass for a simulation. Here with local mass, it's given everything a mass of 1 kilogram. And so our force of negative 300% is super powerful on 1 kilogram, where when it was calculating the mass using local density, it was obviously some sort of mass much more than a kilogram. So again, this is dynamics. This is what you do. You adjust properties until you get something in the range of what you like. So let's start slow, minus 10%, and run the simulation. And okay, better, but it's still way too much. Okay, so let's say minus 5%. Okay. That's giving me something. But I don't want to just blow the entire thing away. I want to actually blow it out from the middle. So I'm going to do a couple of things for that. First thing I'm going to do is use a fall off. And let's drag, let's see, we've got our radial force in here. Let's add a radial fall off to the scene. Okay. Also, put these guys in your dynamics folder so we are nice and organized. Here's my radial fall off. And I am going to, not so shockingly, plug the relationship graph into the fall off input over there. And now this fall off is affecting our radial force. And if I play the simulation, all that I'm getting is gravity, because the fall off is that this radial force is only happening. It can only happen on the outside of this fall off, and since it's completely outside of the fall off, on the inside of the fall off, and since it's completely outside of the fall off, we are getting a zero force. If I stop this guy and we do something like here, our drop action is fun. Let's put that to match, and I drag and drop this on this guy, and now we just matched the position there. Okay, we can even then parent if we want to. So when I move the force around, the fall off goes with it. But still, we're just getting gravity because the force is not emanating beyond that sphere. So grabbing our fall off and our radius, click all three of these guys and press the C key. Make sure in item mode for channel haul, and let's drag this out a little bit. And then, in fact, I'm gonna maybe actually not the X, the Y. I'm gonna squeeze them down just a tad, and grabbing the force, let me just sort of move them, nudge them like this. So now the edge of this force is going to be hitting our pillar right there on the side. If I run the preview here, I'm not getting a lot of force on it, and mostly gravity is happening. Okay, so let's undo that. Let's say strength -20 and see if we get a little bit of a push. Not yet. Okay, so let's move this guy a little closer, see if we get a bit of a push. Okay, now we're getting a bit of a push. Okay, so that's what I want. What I don't want, though, is this whole thing falling apart, like it was already pre-shattered, right? You want to look like something hit it, and it falls down in a natural way. If we look at our nuke guy here, the top falls off, and it kind of stays together. When it hits, it shatters some more. The bottom part kind of stays together and even sticks together once it hits. And let me just kind of stop this. So we want something a little more natural looking like this. Not like something was pre-shattered and just, fell down. So how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is do two things. We need to adjust glue strengths, and I think we also need to make additional compound rigid bodies. Right now we have one compound rigid body, and inside this compound rigid body we have at the very bottom a glue strength, okay, a compound glue strength. What this will do is apply a glue strength with a little bit of a plus or minus for each piece within this one compound. But what I really want is three different compounds. I don't want just one compound, I want three compounds. A top compound, a middle compound, and a bottom compound with a lot of glue strength so it sticks together. Okay, so how do you do that? First, let me ask you something. Have you saved your scene yet? Have you saved your scene yet? I have not saved my scene yet. So Command-Shift-S, go to desktop. I think I had one here, maybe not. We'll call it Pillar Toot Rev 1. Save. Always save your scene. Save your scene. If you don't have autosave on, you don't necessarily have to do autosave if you're good at manually saving, but you might also want to have autosave going. Okay, so we need multiple compound rigid bodies. Let's make our item list bigger and I'm going to be grabbing some pillar shards out of here. And for now, I'm going to excuse me. For now, I am going to hide my dynamics just to get them out of the way. Press Q to drop the move tool if that's still active. And just, middle mouse, circle click these guys. Okay, so we've got this group of guys here, right? So Control G to group those. And let's call these guys bottom shards. Bottom shards. And we'll just keep them above inactive geometry and hide those guys. Then we have some on the top here. We will call group these guys, and you got it. We'll call it top shards. Okay. Which leaves us with all these middle shards. Hide that guy, all these middle shards here, which, as you might guess, we will call banana pants. No, we'll call it middle shards. Middle shards. Hey, guess what kind of person I am? I want the top shards up top, in the middle there, and the bottom there, because I am that kind of person. Pillar shards. Hey, look, there's a pillar shards group, and we can even put these guys inside our pillar shards group. Okay, great. So we have a pillar shards group with top, bottom, and middle shards. However, they're all connected to, all I did was just sort of organize them. I haven't done anything with them yet. So what I want to do is, oh no, top shards have to be on top. What are you doing, Greg? I hate that. All right, top shards. In fact, let's start with bottom shards here, actually. So, oh, I don't want the base in there. Where's the base in there? There we go. Must have accidentally selected the base. Make sure your base is not in your shard folder. If you were doing this, you probably selected your base, which reminds me, base and ground, let's just stop that right now. Let's lock these guys. So those are locked, and I should not be able to grab them. Actually, you can't grab them. You have to go to lock, display, where is that again? Properties. Oh, you know where it is. You know where it is. The lock is you can't change values, but you can still select it. So over here in the Animate tab, sorry for the diversion here, you've got your Assemblies tab. I know this is so annoying, but lock yes, select no. Ground, whoops. Lock yes, select no. In fact, you could probably, I mean, I don't know if you can change selections here with the right click. Anyway, so yeah, that could be useful in other tabs, right? Without having to go to animate. Okay, back here in the setup tab, I'm going to do the old escape double tap. So just double tap escape twice, and it will drop any sort of tool or any selection you may have had, just so we're all in the clear here, right? Okay, so collapse these guys. We're just dealing with the bottom shards first. Okay, so I have them selected here, and you can see that the nodes have a blue outline, but the nodes themselves are not selected. I can't, I'm just dragging them one at a time. I wish there was some command I could issue that would select all pre-selected nodes. Maybe there is, but I don't think there is, so I actually have to just hold shift and grab these guys. Okay, grabbing these guys, and I'm going to drag them over here. And then I'm going to right mouse drag my connection and press delete. These guys are no longer part of our dynamic assembly. If I press play, they're just there. They're just mesh items, right? They're no longer part of the compound rigid body, which is right here. We are going to make them into their own compound rigid body, though. But first of all, I'm going to clear these out of the node graph, remove nodes, because they're all messy, and I hate it. They're all messy, and there's no auto cleanup. And so we have to move them out, keep them selected, do a compound rigid body, and then drag these guys back in. And oh, they're all nice and clean here. So yeah, that's right. You heard me. Okay, so we've got our main guy here, and you know what I'm going to do. You know what I'm going to do. Let's find press F. There he is, right there. Don't press F when the mouse is over here. You'll flip polygons, but if you say are collapsed, if you press F, it'll just, over in the item list, it'll find it. And I'm going to right click, make him blue, and call him a hero pillar. Okay, I think I spelled that differently than my other hero pillar, but that's okay. Pillar shard hero. Okay, let's do that. Pillar shard hero. And, we want this guy at the top where he's easy to get to because all our dynamic properties are on this guy, right? So here we have 1, here we have 2. When I press simulate, okay, they're all being simulated. Now you'll notice, that was just gravity, right? I didn't turn off the radial emitter, but if it's not visible, it's not part of the simulation. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. That's how Modo works at the moment. So I turn that back on, and I have them being pushed, right? So everything's being pushed. Okay, so let's do something interesting here. Let's select our Pillar Shard Hero 2 and go to the Dynamic tab, yank that up a bit, go all the way down to the bottom where it says glue. And under compound glue, it says -0. What -0 typically means in simulations is that parameter is set to off. So if there's actually really good tooltips in a lot of these dynamic channels. So here it says, this is the strength of the glue that will bind any touching objects in this item's compound only. So this glue only affects these guys touching each other. It does not affect them touching these guys. It is just glue for these guys. So if we grab our compound hero object that has all the dynamic attributes, and we go to glue and say 5, which is, again, we're guessing at numbers here because that's how simulations work. We will narrow this down and simulate. Look, they're all glued together. They all stay together, but they get knocked over. So we're getting somewhere. I like this. In fact, I like it so much, I'm going to save my scene again. Save. Okay, so now we all know what we're going to do. We're going to take these guys over here, keep the middle shards. We're going to keep these top shards here. And you can see all the guys pre-highlighted in blue. Holding shift, we are going to select them all. And move them. You know what they are? These are the top shards. Oops. Lost my selection. Top shards go on top. Middle shards in the middle. Bottom shards at the bottom. That's right. I'm like that. Helps you stay organized. Nor this. Modo's hard to organize. Just organize it. Okay, so these are all the guys right here. And we are going to kill these dynamic connections. Select them. Press delete. And they are gone. And guess what? Since I can't auto-organize, I'm going to remove the nodes. And then I am going to make a compound rigid body and move the nodes back in. And here they are on top because they're the top shards. And I find my hero guy. And yes, that's right. I'm going to call him, what am I going to call him? Pillar Shard Hero. He'll be Pillar Shard Hero 3. Shard Hero. And make him blue. And save my scene. And let's give these guys a glue strength. So we gave these guys a glue strength of what? Move this up. Guys in the middle of a glue strength of 5. Or the guys in the bottom of 5. Guys in the middle, let's say a low glue strength like 0.2. And the guys on top, all of these shards up here, let's give them something in between in terms of glue strength, like 1. Okay, and let's run our simulation, see what happens. Interesting, little things in the middle falling, and boom. Okay, so the glue's a little too strong, so let's take our top shards and lower the glue to 0.5. Also, this glue plus and minus will give, we'll say 0.1. We'll make everything in there, between 0.4 and 0.6, each one of these 10 items or so, right? Middle guys, glue is probably still too strong at 1, or 0.2, so let's call it 0.05. And bottom one, maybe 5 is too much, let's say it's 3 or 2, okay? Simulate. All right, lots of middle ones falling, top falls, but what I really want is, I'm getting there, right? What I really want, let me just stop and play it again, is I want this top chunk to really shatter when it hits the ground. So one, the force I don't think is strong enough. I want to push it over more. Okay, so it's sort of, I want this guy being pushed more. Okay, it's sort of falling that way. I want it to fall this way, and I want it to fall apart when it hits the ground, when it has a collision force on the ground. So, and let's up this to minus 30% and move it up so it's hitting not just the middle but also the top to push that top over. And again, I'm just gonna move that top glue strength down some more from 0.05 to that's the middle one. I think the top glue strength. Let's call the top one is 0.5. Let's try 0.1 with a 0.05 or 0.02 variable there. Okay, I don't know why I have a move tool active. And let's see how this works. Okay, not gluey enough. So it did break when it fell, but the force is knocking it apart. Gravity's knocking it apart. So that's pretty close, right? I'm getting there, and this is what simulation is. It's just running it again and again and again until you have something you like, and then you simulate it, and oh my gosh, it's like different now, but it actually looks better. And so that's so again, we're just going to keep tweaking these numbers and running the simulation. I want a little more force here, maybe negative 40. Up a little bit, and let's run this again. Okay, here goes the bottom finally. Okay, not bad. Let's make this 2.2, a little fatter there. A little more glue strength on the top, maybe. 0.2, okay. Oh, this is looking good. This is looking promising. Boom, falls apart. Just want it to fall apart a little bit more, and I think I'll be happy. So compound glue strength 0.15, and sim this again. All right, that's looking pretty cool. Escape double tap. Don't want to hold that guy anymore, so save my scene. Let's actually take a peek through the camera here and move my camera back. I can do a couple things with my camera. First thing I'm going to do with my camera, by the way, is over here in the shading, in the render properties of the shading tab. Okay, let's bring Modo back to the 21st century. We all liked DV video back in the 90s, in the early 90s, but 720 by 480 is not what we want. Let's do a 16 by 9, let's say 960 by 540, that's half HD, half 1080, that'll work for us. And just holding control and swiping on the little circle there, we can split and control space. Let's get a perspective, control 1, toggle on our camera, there it is. And I'm going to do a quick simulation. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change my scene settings, which I should have done way back when. I typically work with video, 30 frames per second. Honestly, 24. I always feel more data is better, even if you're going to wind up at 24. So you may want to do 30, 48, something like that. But let's do 30 and bump this up to 200 frames or so. Boom, boom. Okay. And then the simulation button, of course, to the far right, is going to cache everything. So it's going to compute the sim and also cache it. So let's do this. And so we're not done with our simulation yet. We're going to keep tweaking it, but I can scrub through here now. I'm just going to get a basic camera move in there so I can start putting some life into this scene. So here's where I want the camera to end up, kind of like right in there in the action. So I want to be in here and kind of low when this action is happening. And camera, let's go to camera view and let's give it a wider angle, like 35 millimeters, a little bit wider, a little bit fatter in there. And Shift W, Shift E, right? That'll put keys on position and rotation, pulling back. And from the beginning, let's pull back a little bit. Nice little trick is if you're going off kilter on the bank on your Z-axis, if you just continue to hold Alt and just click here towards the edge of the screen, you can sort of crank that back down, that bank. Actually want to kind of look like I'm looking up at our guy there. Okay. And so as it's coming, we're moving in, and it sort of finishes towards the camera, right? That's pretty cool. All right, let me hide that. If you press Control 1 and go up, you can hide locators in the viewport, and that our solver is still going to be active. These guys are still going to be active. These are just locator items, right? All these physics items and all the rigging items, they're locator items, and you can hide it just with the Control 1 toggle locators. Just to get a better view of this, I actually want to look down a little more. I just want to make this to look really sort of imposing at the beginning, and then go off screen a little bit. See how it's coming out of frame. It's nice to have things come out of frame sometimes. You don't always want your stuff in frame. Comes out of frame, slams down, and comes towards the camera. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. But what I really would like to see is when this piece hits, this top piece, boom, I want to see these guys fracture into smaller pieces. So we're going to actually continue to fracture our item here. So I've got these two guys selected. And I think I might actually do this one at a time. Let's take a look. We've got pillar 14, pillar 32 there, and pillar shard hero 3. So these two guys, we'll do, let's just turn them, mark them temporarily pink so I know which ones I want. And I'm going to shatter this guy again. So let's go back to our front frame here. And then I'm going to kill this viewport. And if you press Control Shift at once and then tilde, you get this little pie menu here. This used to be just Control tilde before they replaced with that big ugly task switcher pie menu, which I hate. But this is the slash and burn workflow. So it's an extremely quick way to split screens and throw in a preview or remove a screen. And so let's just work with the one screen in perspective right now. We don't need to look through the camera at this second. Anyway, so we've got this guy selected. Here he is right here. I'm going to actually unhook him from our dynamics. Boom, now he's off on his own. And we're going to go to geometry and mesh shatter. And let's do a uniform shatter here. Actually, you know what? We could do let's do a uniform shatter. What the heck? So this will make sort of chunky, rocky things and not the sort of lengthened splinters. So we'll do uniform, and let's maybe 16. Everything else is the same. Shatter interior we don't need. We called it, if you remember, we just canceled. We called it shatter interior with all caps because I just think human readable. Mask names in the shader tree are really important, so we will change that back. Honestly, there should probably be a drop down right here to let you pick a name that's already existing in the scene, but we'll just do shatter interior, already there. It'll just add it to this guy. Keep everything else on, make sure that normal map's on, hit OK. Let's go back over to our item list. And here they are, right? Put them in a group. So one thing we have to do is this guy, we already unhooked this guy from the simulation, which is good, because if we didn't, he would be hidden, but he would still be hooked into the simulation. So if you did not unhook the guy we shattered from your physics simulation, you need to get him unhooked. And then we'll just drag that guy to the inactive geometry folder, because he is now inactive geometry. Okay. And here's our group, and let's pull these guys out. And they don't need to be pink anymore. Shift click, edit color none. Although I do need my hero, right? So it's all these guys. And again, they're so jumbled in here, and there's no make look nice button yet. I know there will be at some point, but it didn't make it in 801, so let's remove the nodes and drag them back in. Okay. We're going to make these a compound rigid body. Okay. And once again, we've got our sort of hero rigid body there. This guy right here, right click. Blue. Does it ever get boring making always organizing your scene? No, because you will be thankful that you organize your scene later on. So, okay. So we'll call this small shards A, because we are going to have a B as well. So small shards A hero. And then I was going to shatter one more bit. So we get a few more. This guy right here is going to get his own, he's going to be shattered, so we have some more little pieces. So unhook him from the simulation, and drag him up here, and then let's run the shatter command. Geometry, mesh shatter, uniform. Change this to shatter interior. Okay, boom. And shattered, and there we go. So now we've got lots of little pieces. This guy right here goes to inactive geometry. See you later. And my new group of guys right here gets moved to the top. And boom, small shards B. Okay, these don't need to be pink. I know you guys love watching tutorials where a guy is just organizing his scene. It's so exciting. All messed up in here. Don't want them in there because they're all messed up in there. This guy I want, though. Where is he at? Modo very much needs an auto organizer. Okay, so here's our trick where we remove them so we can bring them in nice and organized. This guy's no longer hooked up to the sim, so we don't need him in there. Okay, drag our shards, lots of shards, drag them in, and let's move them up. Let's make a compound rigid body. Boom. And where's our hero shard? Right here. Let's give him the blue color and the badge of honor. Hero shard, small shards, B, hero. All right, so I've got my little shards taken care of. We'll collapse that and move A above B because that's just the way I am. And let's take a look at our glue strength now because we've got some other parameters to play with. So we go to dynamics, and we've got three groups of shards at the top here. We've got all these little shards here, right? All these little little broken up guys here, and then we've got all our broken up shards over here, okay? And then we've got all the rest of the shards on top, these sort of longer splinters. And we just select them all at once. And we go over to dynamics and we'll look at the glue strength. So this compound glue right here, if I crank this up high, let's say to like 10, what that's going to do, and when I sim it, is just going to keep everything within these compounds together. These little shards are going to stay together, these little shards are going to stay together, and these, the rest of the shards are going to stay together. But they're not going to stick to each other. If I sim the simulation, and then you'll see like the sides fell off, all those little shards are stuck in chunks, and a big top chunk is stuck together. But all our top pieces aren't sticking together, they're just, each compound group is just glued together. So what we need to do is get the entire group of shards at the top of the pillar, the little shards plus our big shards, to stick together and then break apart when they fall. So we have these other things here, glue A, B, C, D, all the way to H. What that allows us to do is, I'm going to grab my heroes and dynamics. If I add strength to glue A, any shards, any dynamic items, compound items that are in connection with another compound, another dynamic item, even if it's in a different compound, if they share a strength in the glue A slot, let's just call that 5, then they're going to stick together. So now that I've cranked up the glue A strength, in addition to the glue strength, not only will each of these shards stick to each other in the compound group, but each of these compound groups are going to stick together as well. So when I simulate the entire thing, this whole big top chunk stays together. It's probably going to stay together the whole time. So there's not enough force to break that apart. But see how that works? Before we were only getting this group together, and this group together, and this group together. Now that they all share a common glue A parameter, they're all sticking together. So what we need to do is play with our glue strengths until we get something we want. So one way to make this life a little bit easier is let me save the scene real quick, is to gather these glue strengths. Instead of having them in a bunch of different items here in the schematic, let's gather all these together into one item, because that's going to make life a little easier for us, right? Okay. So if I control 1 and toggle locators, we see our dynamic locators pop back into view. And if I press the L key, we just get a new locator in the scene. And dragging that up to the geometry, the pillar shards, or right above the pillar shards folder, and rename this pillar master. And let's parent the pillar shards to pillar master. And of course, I don't like the default sort of locator shape for important locators, so we'll add some draw options. We'll just make it a purpley color, white purple with maybe a dark purple fill. I like my purple. And then for the shape, let's do replace circle on the Y, select the radius, press C to bring up channel hall, get us something there. Okay, so now we've got this guy. All our dynamic items attached to this pillar master item. And we're going to add some user channels to this. So under properties, user channels of our pillar master, the user channels, we're going to add some glue strength channels that are going to allow us to drive the glue strength of all our sort of hero compound rigid body objects. So since we've already named all these really well, bottom shards, middle, top, small a and b, let's just start adding some channel names to correspond with these. So over in user channels, add user channel, and just starting with the top, let's say, what was the bottom? We'll say bottom shards glue. You hit tab, you'll notice the Modo takes out the spaces for a valid channel name. That's our username, human readable. That's what we like. Don't give it some weird programmer name. Give it a human readable name. Hit OK. We're just gonna do these for all of them. Bottom, middle. I know, so exciting watching me type in names. I should, tell you a story about the time I saw Bigfoot when I was camping in the Pacific Northwest. And actually, I didn't see Bigfoot, but small shards. Glue. But if I had a story like that, I could tell it to you, and it'd be much more interesting than watching me say small shards B and hitting tab and OK. But now I'm done, so the story doesn't matter. We got them all in there. I'm going to add one more parameter to here, and call it wake on. And we're going to use that to give us a little buffer at the beginning of the simulation in case we want to add the brain damage seagull that flies into our pillar later that causes the damage. We want to adjust when this dynamic time starts. So grabbing all of my dynamic items. So I can grab them here like this or in the item list, or I could be intelligent about this. And since I was smart and named everything hero, we go over here to select, and under item pattern, select item pattern, and we can say let's just do an asterisk, so anything hero anything. So it's going to select all items that have hero in the name, and we've got them, we've got 5 items selected. That's each of our 5 heroes, and here you can see them. I press F, actually F isn't going to do anything with multi-item selected, but we got them all. That's great. And so under dynamics, under sleep, there's a wake on frame. Okay, so we just all 5 of these guys at once. We changed the wake on value to frame, and I'm actually going to add that parameter to the schematic by right-clicking on wake on value and saying add channel to schematic. You'll see it added to all of these guys, right? Which is pretty cool. And the other thing I'm going to do is drag my pillar master into the schematic. Okay, so pillar master's in here. When I do that, it automatically adds all the user values, assuming Modo's being smart and assuming I want to do something with those user values since I created them. So I'm adding those to the schematic. Okay. Again, let's do our select trick, item pattern, asterisk hero asterisk. So we've got all of our hero items selected here. Let's add some channels to this schematic over in dynamics. We've got wake on already. So let's add our glue. So we want compound glue for everybody. So let's add that channel to the schematic. And we only want the glue strength for, glue A strength for the top shard. So let's control right mouse, drag, unselect those guys, and just add glue strength, add channel to schematic for those 3 guys. Okay, pretty good. And do we have a glue A strength here? We do not. So user channel, add channel, glue A strength tab. Okay. And there we got it down there. Okay, it's below the wake on, so we can go over to our channel list, and because I'm one of those guys, I'm just gonna drag it up there, and now it's wake ons at the bottom and glue A is there. See? Helps to be organized. Okay. So what are we gonna do? You know what we're going to do. We're going to grab, we're going to use this as our master item to control the glue and wake on all in one place values without having to dig around in our schematic, right? So again, let's select these guys, select item pattern. We got our heroes, and with all our heroes selected, we can go into like our channels here. And if I select the wake on value, you can see that that's selected here. This channel is now selected. And what's cool is I can, I can hold shift, and this is the input. I'm going to be inputting a value from the output of one of the values on this locator. So I'm going to hold shift and select the input value, and because I was holding shift, I was able to grab them all at once, but I need to actually see my locator there. So if I hover, I get a little, it's harder to hover with a tablet, but I get a zoom. So holding shift, I bring them all in. And again, if I hover, theoretically, hovering, I should get a zoom. Maybe I'm not. But I know the wake on's at the bottom, so let me just attach those to wake on. Okay. To check that. That may be a bug there. It should just give me a zoom if I hover. So I got that connected. Let me just move this guy a little closer to get the glue strength hooked up. So this is small shards B. We want to get the glue in there for small shards B glue. We also want to hook up the glue A strength to small shards B. Same with A. We want the glue strength hooked up and small shards A glue. Over here we've got our pillar shard hero glue. This is the, remember we were smart when we did this. That's our top shards, middle shards, bottom shards. So I know this is the top shards here, so top shards, glue strength, and top shards need an A as well. Okay. Let's go down here to our middle shards. Glue strength, and in the bottom shards, glue strength is last. And let's just do it backwards just to be crazy. Okay. So here we've got, if you notice, we've got white lines and purple lines going on here. Well, what is the deal with those white and purple? If you don't already know, white lines here are channel connections. So I'm connecting just the channel of these glue strings to a channel over here. So this is a feeding from an output to an input, right? Typically, you think of a node graph as going left to right. That's why I have this on the left. But even if I had it over here, it's going out of this and into this. So it looks like it's right to left, but it's easier to read if you keep it left to right. Okay. So that's the channel values. The purple ones, though, are actually graph connections, relationship connections. They're a little more sophisticated. It's not just a single value being fed to another input, from an output to an input. This is more like a communications wire. So there's a lot of dynamics data going back and forth between one of the shards in this group and the master shard of the compound rigid body. And you can hide all the purple relationship lines if you want to just focus on the channel values. Vice versa, I can hide the channel values to focus on the relationship values, or I can show them all at once. So that's the difference. A lot of nodal systems don't really differentiate between, they're all just channel values. Well, in Modo, it's a little more sophisticated. You have channel values and relationship values going on here. I'm going to move this guy all the way over just to sort of isolate him over here. So now we have glue strengths going out of this and over on our user channel. To make this even easier, though, we're going to go to our assembly. And so if Modo typically defaults like this in the setup tab, and you don't even know there's an assembly tab over here. In fact, I think earlier I went over the animate tab just to get to the assembly tab. But it's in the setup tab. You just don't see it. If you scooch them over, you'll see the assembly tab there. And what I want to do is add a utility command to this. So I hit utility, that will drop down to our nice little Modo has these cool little presets here, and I can do item.channelHall. All that does is when I select this item in item mode and I select it, it fires that channel hall command. The channel hall command will automatically bring up user channels. So what's cool is, let me just double tap escape to lose that. If I select it, I automatically get my glue strings there in a channel hall. And as you might have guessed, that's easier than me digging through all of these guys every time I want to change my glues. And I'm going to have to mess around with my glue strength quite a bit to get what I want from this simulation. So now I have them all in one place. I'm also going to change the wake on time to 10 because, again, I'm buffering this a little bit so my brain damaged seagull or bullet or hammer or whatever that hits this pillar eventually, I can give a little buffer at the beginning to add some animation. Maybe a little C4 bomb. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. I'm not going to do the tutorial. That's your homework. Okay, so if I hit the open triangle simulation, nothing's going to happen because my wake on's at 10. And if you remember, this is only going to take the values at the current frame. Current frame is 0. Well, everything's asleep at 0, so nothing's happening. So I'm going to have to hit the filled-in triangle to run the simulation, get past frame 10, and then it all kind of happens there. Okay. So glue is all falling apart because what I did is when I hooked this up, I replaced the values in those glue slots with zeros. So I had to glue this guy back together. So bottom shards, I had a high glue strength. Middle shards, I had a really low glue strength. Top shards, I had a medium 0.15. Small shards, maybe a little bit less, 0.1, 0.1. And glue A, I had maybe 0.25 or something. So let's, or I could have done that all here, which is why I put it there. So let's run the simulation. Okay, now we're getting what I want. Little pieces, bottom keeping together, top hitting. And it's glued together a little too tight. So, this is just an iterative process where I'm going to lower the glue strength A to say 0.07 and maybe we'll go with that, maybe a little less than all these guys. 0.1, 0.08, 0.07. Let's see what we got here. Blows it down. Now it's coming apart a little too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop the recording and I'm going to get these to where I want them, okay? Now there's a little bit of tweaking going on. I may adjust my force here a little bit or move my force around a little bit to affect different parts of, let me look at it from the side here, different parts of this, the top or bottom a little less. But I'm going to keep tweaking things until I get what I want, okay? Getting a little closer there. Okay, so actually that's pretty good. So let me, little errors there, but not going to worry about that right now. So let me go offline and get this to where I want it, and you guys can do the same thing. Get it to where you want it, and then we will continue on with this. Okay, so I've spent a few minutes tweaking values, running simulations, and I have something that I like. If you look over here, actually I can hide the dynamics group now because I've got it cached. I don't need those guys anymore. I get a good, just change the angle here a little bit. I set a wake time of 10, and so 10 frames in, we get the hit. The top part stays together, kind of goes off frame a little bit like I like. Bottom staying together. The top part hits and shatters, and we get some cool motion with pieces flying over the camera. So they kind of settle after a while. So that's what I like. I'm sure you have something different. But, it's just, like I say, I keep saying dynamics is one of those things you just have to play with. You have a certain idea of what you want going in, and you set up the simulation like we did with some glue strengths and different compound body groups and some different shatter groups and just sort of direct it a little bit. But then you just keep running the simulation until you find something you like. Now, I wish Modo allowed me to save this simulation cache separately. And unfortunately, you can do that with particles, but as far as I know, there's no way to spit the simulation cache out to disk. You can bake the dynamic transforms or just save the scene. The simulation cache is actually saved in the XLO file. What I'd like to see Luxology do is let us save and load caches here in the simulation item. But we can't do that now. So if you accidentally resim without saving, it's going to blow away your cache file. Or it's going to blow away your cache. And so be careful. If you have something you like, be careful. So anyway, this is what I like. I just want to talk about these shatter. Remember when we shattered something? We went up here to geometry, mesh shatter, and we got this normal map option. I just want to show you what that is really quick. So if we go back up here to like frame 4 and slash and burn this guy into a preview. I'm just going to push my camera in here. Oh, the other thing I did is I put my camera on a null, and I actually animated the null because really what I want to do is add a bit of a camera shake, and it's a little bit better to have the camera attached to a master object. Then we can shake the camera itself, or you can nest a camera shake null in there, or you could even go in here and add an additional rotation package that Modo lets you have multiple transform packages in just one item, sort of like having a bunch of nulls in just one item. But I'm getting ahead of myself real quick. What I was talking about here is the smoothing group. So let me push into the pillar here, and you'll see even though we've got a bunch of little shattered items here, it's nice and smooth. And the reason that it's nice and smooth, let me grab a couple of these guys, is we have over here in lists, we have other maps, shatter normals. Those were created when we created the shatter groups. And what those do is they bake in a normal to the vertices, and that gives us the perfect shading across these seams. If I were to select this and clear it out for these items, you'll see some shading errors introduced. Okay, so Control Z, get those back in there. So those are shading normals are important. You find those in CAD files. That's how Modo deals with CAD files. It brings in shading normals with the CAD file to the same types of maps as these normal maps here to give perfect smoothing. But if you delete them, or if you start using modeling tools to manipulate the vertices, you're going to screw these up and you're going to get bad shading. So something to be aware of. I cannot go in and start remodeling these items without screwing up my shading normals. Okay. Okay, so camera, get this guy back to 0. We're going to do a quick camera shake right here. So as we're moving forward, bam, we get one initial hit right there, then another one right here. Let's see, we've got how many frames in between. If you just do shift right arrow, you can go by the frames. That's frame 40. Another one at 46. So let's do a camera shake hit right here at frame 40. So let's we got our camera selected. I'm going to just Shift E to keyframe the rotation values. I'm going to slash and burn this away and swipe and give myself a perspective view here. And with the camera, we're going to go up a little bit. And this is real simple. It's not really a shake like an earthquake. It's a jar. Like the camera is jarring. And we're going to go off to the side, off kilter, go forward about 3-4 frames, say 3 frames. And I'm going to go head down. And I'm going to bank it the other direction. And then let's go for 5 frames or so and put everything back to 0. Let me drag through this. So, whoops, we want our initial one. I must have messed that up. We want a 0 on our initial keyframe, and then we're going to jar that way. Whoopsie daisy. Backtrack. I messed up. That's no problem though. So I actually want to keep this one. Let me go back 3 frames here and put these at 0. Just hit Control Enter. Let's keyframe the Y as well. And then I'm going to go up to frame 40 where we get that impact and right click, select all these guys, right click to move the whole group over. So these hit, we get a jar down, back up, and then it evens out. Okay, so that's just a camera jar. Boom, right? Up, down. I think this down 1. So that's normal, up, down. I think I'm going to stretch that out a couple. And I'm going to make this down 1 just a little more severe, like this, like that. Check it out. Boom, boom. Okay, now we're back to normal. Okay, so that's a nice little camera shake. Similar to go back and nuke to this pre-rendered one. Right when it hits, boom, boom. You don't need a procedural rig or have to do a bunch of animation on it. It's really just a couple of keyframes to get that. So a couple more notes before we move on to particles. I did a quick render of this guy. When you're doing a render, make sure you turn on motion blur. Over here it's in the grab your camera. And in camera effects, you want to turn on motion blur. If you're going to have motion blur on, you also, in your render item here, under settings, you want your anti-aliasing samples up fairly high. These directly affect motion blur, where if you have like a really, I think it defaults to 8. If you have 8, it's going to be kind of grainy motion blur. If you go up to 256 or 512, the motion blur is going to be very smooth, and it's going to take longer to render. But these are pretty quick renders. Here this guy is right here, and you can see what motion blur really adds to it. You got the camera shake, and then kind of settles down. Looks pretty cool. I like it. However, we're getting some weird shading. Okay, so look at this chunk right here. It's kind of weird looking. It doesn't look quite right. And there's a couple of other guys here as well. So you remember our shading normals, the shading normal map we got. Let me just grab one of these dudes here. Under enlist, this vertex map list, shattered normals. So those help us keep the cylinder nice and smooth on the outside. But what happened is we shattered our cylinder, and we got our nice shattered normals to keep this nice and smooth. And then we went back in and we re-shattered a couple of these chunks into the smaller ones. There are small shards. And those have been shattered twice. And what happened is, when we push through here, when we shattered it twice, we got some errors on the shading normals. So if you check this guy right here, he's one of our small shard shatters. Press F to find him in the list there. And that looks a little weird. And if I just select the polygons here and go over to my vertex map list and right click and clear the shattered normals here, right click and clear it, you'll see that cleared up that weirdness in the viewport. And there's some weirdness on this guy too. So this is an unfortunate aspect of vertex normals. If you use any modeling tool, let me back up. If you have an item that has vertex normals baked into the vertices, so a vertex normal map, right here, a normal map on the vertex normals, to handle the shading instead of just using material properties down here, which Modo can do as well, the smoothing angle. If you've got these, whether it's a CAD file or a shattered object where you had them created, if you manipulate the points of your item with any modeling tool or by reshattering it or something like that, you're going to screw up the shading. The vertex normals are going to get weird. You can see them all around here. And there's just not a lot you can do about that. it's unfortunate. One thing you can do, what we're going to try and do here is I'm gonna select all the small shards here by double clicking that guy, and I'm going to, whoops, let's go up top here, go to item mode. You see all these small shards there, and press 3 to go to polygon mode, and in info and statistics I'm just going to select the shatter interior. I'm going to try to clear those off of there. So we're going to clear those off. You do the same thing with small shards B, these guys right here. Some of these guys are in the just out of the camera view. Same thing, grab that red material, the interior, and clear those guys off. Okay, you can see that cleaned up some of that in there. Looking good, but we still have some stuff, like even on this guy. I select him and select the red material. If I clear this, it's going to clear up some of those shading normals. So it's unfortunate. What we want to do is, let me just back off here. I think that's about everybody in the camera view. We just don't want that to mess up our initial item here. We don't want to see those seams. So I think if we relegate clearing those to the interior, we're going to be okay, and we'll just keep it to the ones we see in the camera view here, just in case. So we'll grab these two guys. They're over here in top shards, where these pieces were shattered as well. So in fact, let me grab all the top shards, and we'll get the interior, and I'm going to clear off that vertex normal. Okay, so that cleans up the interior shading. Let's go back. I think we're still fine here. Grab my camera. I'm just going to move my camera up. I'll delete this auto-generated keyframe later if we end up getting one, but let's move our camera in here, get in close. We're looking okay. Let's look at the little shards here. I think we're okay. Might be a couple little shading errors, but it's very hard to tell. So I think we're all right. So this isn't really a, let me get rid of this keyframe here now. This isn't, I don't know if you want to call this a bug. It's kind of a bug. It's more of an incomplete engineering issue with Modo. It just doesn't deal with altering vertex normals. And I don't know if that's even possible, if the math is there to do that. If you end up reshattering them, do you repair the old ones while creating the new ones if they already exist? Or if you want to model this guy a little bit with some modeling tools, want to move the verts around, can you move them around without destroying the shading? Can the vertex normals adapt to the movement? I don't know. But right now in Modo it cannot do that, so we're compensating by seeing that some of them are messed up and clearing them off. So this is, if you look at this, then you look at this guy in Nuke, you see there's some messed up shading here. Let's go to 133. In Modo, right after I've cleared the shading normal VMAPs from these particular polygons, these particular verts, I lose this bad shading. So we're looking good. I can re-render. And then next tutorial, I swear, particles. It won't be 17 hours long either, I promise.